It's been 5 years since the tragedy occurred at Mother Emanuel AME Church here in downtown Charleston. Today, I sit down exclusively with Sheppard and Felicia Sanders' attorney, Andy Savage, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Andrew Savage, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Always good to be with you, Quintin. You make my day. You know that?
I appreciate
Whenever
that.
I see you, just smile. You just you spread smiles. So
Thank you.
good to see you.
Oh, likewise. What is it like to be Andy Savage these days with the coronavirus, with obviously civil unrest around the country?
So I thought that was a pretty sneaky question, Quintin. What you want me to do is admit that I'm vulnerable because of age. You have to remind me of that. So yeah, we've been Cheryl and I have kept. We live way out on Johns Island. We've kept pretty isolated.
Sure.
This old fella's learning technology, so I've gotten pretty adept at GoToMeeting and Zoom and all the other ones. So, life continues. It's slowed down, frankly, a good bit for me. The fortunate thing about the virus, and you can always look at it negatively, but the positive thing is it's given us time to step back. Who am I? What am I doing? What am I doing to help my community? What are the issues in my community? What are the issues in my family? With the virus, I wasn't able to spend a whole lot of time with my grandchildren. But mentally, I did. And thought about them and what I can do to be a better grandfather and what I can do to assist my children and my grandchildren. We have 10, and my two oldest grandchildren were both graduated this year from high school, and it was a mixed blessing. I couldn't see them. Their families couldn't attend the graduation, but the virus gave me a lot of time to reflect, and I take that as a positive. I feel terrible for the people that were burdened by their health issues. I was very fortunate. But it was it's terrible to say, but it was a good time for me, in terms of internal reflection and whatnot. Hugely troubled by the continuing racial divide. A lot of people are focused on individual issues, be those in Minneapolis or be those in Atlanta this weekend. But we've got to get out of that pigeonholing this specific event. It's universal. So even as you sit next to me now, we all are products of our upbringing and whatnot. And let's not just focus on the death, which was terrible, of these individuals, but let's talk about what we do every day. Who do we communicate with? Who do we have lunch with? Who do we go out with? Who do we go fishing with? Who do we go bowling with? It's better, and I said this at the Aviation Authority, they thought I was a little wacko when I said it, but you're a better person when you have a diversified friendship. If you go to the country club and you play with old white men, golf every weekend, you're very narrow. The more you can expand your social interaction, the better person you become. So while we look at these incidents, terrible incidents of death, particularly to black males, let us not become unfocused that black females are discriminated against, and grandmothers are discriminated against, and older black males are discriminated against, and the children of color are discriminated in everything we do. Again, it's not isolated to a Wendy's drive-in. It's everything we do every day. Do we have eye contact? Do we say good morning? Are we pleasant? Are we kind? Do we have negative thoughts? If you have negative thoughts, do you appreciate that? We are who we are, so there And you can say you don't have racist tendencies, but if you grew up in today's world, we all do to some extent. The question is, do you suppress those? Do you put them aside? And do you treat everybody regardless of that difference? So that's different, right? Not so much here. That's sort of where I am today.
Today, yeah.
You know, it's a big week.
Yes, sir.
You know, Wednesday,
Right.
Friday of this week. One more significant in our community than the other, but both are very important dates. It's funny, we just passed Flag Day.
Right.
So this is a time to reflect, and what does that flag stand for? And then how do we carry out what it stands for? What is the symbolism? Sunday, was it Sunday?
Right.
Flag Day?
Yes, sir.
And then how do we carry that meaning of the symbolism of the flag? How do we navigate through the remainder of this week? So, this is not a good time. It's depressing for a lot of us locally. My relationship with my sister, as I say, she truthfully is closer to me than my biological sister, Felicia. When she hurts, I hurt. And, the pain continues. I always, what can I do to unburden Felicia's pain and put it on my shoulders? I'd do anything for her. Her granddaughter, I know you've kept up with her, is still out of state in a psychiatric institution for young people. She has been gone 9 months. Last year she was in another institution, University of Texas. She was in Houston. And it's not it does have something to do with finance, because everything, you've got to pinch pennies and take from this to provide the health care that her granddaughter needs. But people can help, not financially, and that's my irritation with Manning and his crew down at Emanuel. Reach out to them. 5 years now, Emanuel has not reached out one time to this child. How can that be? How can you call yourself Christian? How can you fly up to Pittsburgh like you're the hero of victimization and not tend to your people who have been 7, 8, 9 generations members of that church? The church isn't that structure. I always see on TV, and I see it on Quintin too, right? And you show the picture, that iconic picture of the church, but that's a symbol. That's not a living instrument. That structure doesn't breathe. That structure doesn't think. That structure doesn't have compassion. It doesn't have a heartbeat. The victims in this case are not that structure. They're the people who were directly affected by what happened 5 years ago, and perhaps more so than anyone else was an 11-year-old child whose auntie was killed in front of her, whose uncle bled all over her, whose uncle, ironically, in his death, saved her life because the bad guy, she was covered in so much brain matter and bodily fluid and blood that the bad guy thought she was shot. He didn't realize he didn't shoot her. Same with Felicia. Think about that. And think about Felicia as an adult, grieving the loss of her son, grieving the loss of her auntie. Who could unload that hurt? It was her friends, right? Her friends who would show her compassion and understanding and uplifting and forgiveness. They're all dead. You know, this occurred in the basement of Emanuel. In the sanctuary upstairs, every time she went there, the people who sat next to her were killed that night. So she didn't lose just her son and her auntie. She just didn't lose the innocence of the 11-year-old. But she lost those people who could carry her through and share the burden of that event. Did not exist. And shame on Emanuel parishioners and leadership for not providing any support, spiritual, social, or financial. You know, it still irritates me. I'm still carrying that burden where they got, at least they claim, I think they got a lot more than $3.6 million, and not to help this child, not to help the grandparents, help this child with the financial burden of being hospitalized for now 9 months at this one institution, and 4 months before that in another. That's 13 months.
Right.
Not a postcard, not a phone call, not a hope you're doing better, not a we love you, we care for you, we can't wait till you come back. Nothing. Silence.
As a matter of fact, when I did my last interview with you for Quintin's Close-Ups, you talked about the $3.6 million. How could it...
Well, you know, it's a lot more than that.
Okay.
$3.6 million is what they admit to.
Okay.
That's money that went in the bank. There was a lot of money given that never got to the bank. But we can't chase that. It's, you know, what happened, happened. But they admit that they got 3.6, and as I say, did they really think that the people all over the world who were so generous wanted to paint the church with that money? I mean, you know, the victims is not that structure, and it's certainly not the leadership who weren't even there.
As a matter of fact, you, in the last interview, you said the audacity of the pastor of Emanuel to think he's a victim when he wasn't even there, wasn't anywhere around. Yet he claims to be a victim, and the building itself claims to be a victim.
Yeah, it goes on. You know, and I'm just tired of writing to their attorney, asking for, you know, let's see what you can do for these people. Nothing. I mean, just nothing in response. Manning's a fraud. I mean, it really is. Anybody who wears the collar goes around acting as if they represent pastoral care, and he hasn't done anything. I want you to go, Quintin. I want you to go put that microphone in his face and say, Reverend Manning, when was the last time you attempted to contact this grandchild? Reverend Manning, where is the grandchild? Reverend Manning, where has the grandchild been since June 17th, 2015? Reverend Manning, what kind of troubles has she had? What kind of problems has she had? What type of counseling has she had? Reverend Manning, who is her counselor? Oh, Reverend Manning, when's her birthday? Oh, Reverend Manning, what did you do on Christmas and what did you do on Easter? What have you done for that child? You're a hypocrite. You run around as a victim. You have no victimization. All you have done is plied your pockets with the money of people who come to Charleston who want to see the church structure. You're still getting money every Sunday from people who donate to the Emanuel Fund. For what? You think that really is to paint your church? Or do you think it's the intent to take care of those who've been grievously injured by that night? Parishioners of 6, 7, 8, 9 generations that you have turned your back on.
And I would love to interview him for Quintin's Close-Ups. He's always welcome to come on. Let me ask you this, Andy. How could it be that millions of dollars that are apparently lost and there's no concrete justification for its whereabouts?
Well, as I say, the church, and I have it in writing from them, they have the audacity to think it's their money. You know, it's just unbelievable. They think that all the donations were for the benefit of the structure, right? Or the hierarchy. You know, I wish Felicia had gotten as much money as they transferred to Manning and Goff and the bishops and all. They got their little cut of the money. How do they deserve that? They weren't at Bible study. You know, none of them were there. It's just unbelievable. In the public, in the media, we talk about the Emanuel 9, right? That's what everybody's saying this week, Emanuel 9.
Yes.
No, it's not Emanuel 9. It's Emanuel 12. The 9 who are dead aren't suffering today. The 3 who survived continue to suffer all day, every day. Can you imagine being in a closed environment, hearing 77 shots, seeing and feeling your best friends in life, bodily fluids, explode and cover you? What kind of trauma do you think that would be for you? And then think about the type of trauma it would be for an 11-year-old child who's hiding under her grandmother's body, her grandmother laying over her to protect her life, damn near smothering her. And then when the bad guy leaves, the last thing she hears from her uncle is water, water. She gets up from under her grandmother, walks through the carnage, steps over the bodies, covered in blood, brain matter, looking for water. And when the wonderful first responders, the City of Charleston Police Department, that did so much that night in terms of compassion, their investigation and protection of these people, the film that they took on their body cams as they came in, nobody wants to see that video because of the psychological damage that the viewer will suffer, but you put yourself in the position of that 11-year-old. And Reverend Manning, you continue to ignore that. Shame on you.
How could it be, okay, how can it be that the inquiry regarding the whereabouts of the money is not persistent and even demanding from parishioners of the church?
You know, I haven't heard from any. I've heard from a handful of parishioners. You know, I think all the families of the 9 and the 3 survivors, Emanuel has no longer taken the place in their lives that it previously did. Most obvious example is Felicia. She was involved in every facet of that church, whether it was the elevator, collecting funds for that, whether it was the kitchen, whether it was the ushers, you know, whatever it was, Felicia was there. I mean, think about it. Who goes to church, who goes to Bible study on Wednesday night with their auntie and with their son and with the grandchild? Who does that? So it wasn't like Felicia was there like everybody else was. They were there individually.
Sure.
Felicia was a family unit that came there from 87 years of age to 11 years of age. And Tywanza, he was with his mom. He wanted to go to Bible study, you know, a fellow of his age. But that tells the character of him, right? And who he was, the essence. Felicia and Tywanza and Aunt Susie. Everybody loves Aunt Susie, right? She ruled the roost. She and her 5 sisters, but Susie was the boss lady. And then to watch a 87-year-old woman's head explode. 11 shots to her body. You know, to watch and listen to Tywanza after he's shot several times, get up and say, Why are you doing this? We mean you no harm. More shots. You know, Felicia, Felicia attributes her life being saved by Taiwanza. One is because when he got up, it sort of distracted the bad guy, right? So they're at the table, Susie, Taiwanza, the grandchild, and Felicia, round table just like this. Polly's at the next table with Ethel Lance.
Right.
And you know, he had already come down from several tables up there, starting with the pastor and Reverend Simmons and the others. So we finally get to this table, and you know, he's standing over Felicia, over her, like she's hiding under the table. Think about what's going on in her mind at that time, or the child's mind, or Tawanza's. Think about it, because it's not like he got shot in the back of the head and never knew what happened. No, you hear these gunshots coming your way. You're hiding under the table. And Tawanza got shot first at that table, not mortally. And then Susie was next. Susie got shot 11 times, as I said, her head exploded. So, I know it's horrible, tough to think about, but think about what happens to the body when you're shot that many times. You explode bone fragments, bodily fluids, brain matter, and blood just explodes all over them. So, and Susie's dead. Tawanza is dying. And Tawanza, before Felicia gets shot, gets up and says, "We mean you no harm." So it distracts them. Distracts the bad guy. Bam, bam, bam. And kills Tawanza. And then he goes on to Ethel Lance next. So he kind of overlooked Felicia. You know, she's covered in blood and whatnot, but he was distracted by Taiwanza, so he goes to the next table, and God bless her, Ethel, who was the kindest person in the world, who always had a positive thing to say about the negative things, right? Sure. She always had a bright outlook and compassion like nobody else, and empathy for those. She wasn't a rich woman, you know. She was a cleaning lady, basically, right, in the church. I mean, she, you know, I knew her from Gilliard. I mean, everybody loved Ethel, and just without any reflection at all, bam, killed her. And then it was Polly, and of course he says, "Polly, I haven't shot you yet," and you know that whole story. But the purpose of what I'm trying to say to you is that Felicia would be dead today. I believe in my heart, if Taiwanza hadn't gotten up and said to him, "We mean you no harm," because it distracted him. Remember, he responded and said, "You know, you're raping our women," and all that crazy stuff that he said. But it did distract him, and that's probably why Felicia's with us today.
How is she 5 years later? And Polly?
You know, Felicia's carrying a big load. Felicia's load is not Felicia alone, right? So I'm not trying to compare the two. I love Polly. Polly's having a tough time, but Polly has to take care of Polly, and James is taking care of Polly, and we can focus on Polly. In Felicia's case, she's carrying the burdens of her grandchild. And she's carrying the burdens of her best friends getting killed. So it's hard to, you know, it's impossible to compare who's suffering more, who's, you know, but she's a strong person. But you think that the church would reach out to try to help her with that burden. It doesn't happen. And so the other side of that is you and I, every day we have problems, right? We might think they're big problems, but when you compare, but every day in life, everybody who's watching this show, every day there are problems, whatever they are. They can be financial, they can be family, they can be, I hate my boss, I'm having a tough time at work, or, you know, the sidewalk out in front's this, or the house is that, or this housing's awful, or I'm really hungry, or whatever that is. We all have burdens every day. And those daily burdens that we manage, you and I manage those burdens, they're accentuated in Felicia's life because this overriding burden of what happened, what she observed, what she felt, what she heard, what she saw on June 17th, that she can't shut off, doesn't go away. You know, I can be sitting with her, she feels the burning of that gun when it ejected the bullets and the casing would hit her legs. It burned her because they're hot, and she couldn't scream, she couldn't say anything because she was playing dead. I mean, it's just, it's awful. You know, it's Polly's still burdened. I mean, we all are. Polly's tough, Polly's strong. And her husband, James, is the best ever. I mean, he's just, I don't know whether you've met him or not, Dapper James, always dressed in tea. He's just such a good guy, and, you know, he's really helped Polly and shared that load. And Polly has the energy and the intelligence and the communication ability to remind people of what happened.
I know you basically said, hey, I don't want to sue this church at all. But
well, who likes suing a church? I mean, isn't that the antithesis of, as a lawyer? No, I don't want to sue a church. You know, I want to go over there, take my cane and bang it on his head. You know, what the heck's wrong with you, knucklehead? I mean, what do you see that I don't see? You know, do I want to go to court to tell you how to behave as a Christian and you're the pastor of a church? Do I really need to have an entity does not have its foundation in religion tell somebody who's supposedly religious and Christian what to do? But I can tell you this, it's not over for me. This will continue, whether it's Manning or whoever it is, to seek justice for this child.
What's your definition of justice?
Justice in the Christian sense, right? So we take it away from the civil sense. But justice in the Christian religious sense is accommodating her spiritual needs. That's number one. Helping her with the burden of the events that transpired in her life to reach out to them, to the victims, spiritually, socially second, and way behind financially. But in this case, that's not the church's money to reach out and provide to her. You know, the church was given that money in trust for the victims, right? So the Christian way would be to hug and to love, and protect and buoy from the heart. And then if you're able to financially help them, that's good too, that's a bonus. But in this case, the money is not the church's money to give. It's their money that the church has withheld from those who have given to the victims of this event. The church has funneled that money into their bank accounts for what they see is the use of that money, when in truth it's to be held in trust for the victims. I mean, do you think anybody who gave $1 or $100,000, whatever they got, meant to deprive this child of health care? And the health care for this child was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Sanders are not a rich family. They're an industrious family. They're hard workers. You know, Felicia had a beauty shop forever. Tyrone, to this day, goes down at midnight and works on the docks in the rain and the cold and the wind and the heat and the hot of the sun. He's there. He works about 7 days a week just to stay even, right? And thank God for the ILA and the response that they gave and the insurance, health insurance that Tyrone has. But you know, health insurance, they're not big on mental health and psychiatric care. You know, they're much more limited than if your leg was broken or your arm was broken or you had a heart attack. So that doesn't cover the expenses. And just little things like driving to where she is.
Right.
Money for gas, the car, meals, overnight expenses. And nothing, no sign of compassion or, you know, goodwill. I mean, look in the Bible and see the stories about helping others. You know, I mean, there's so many parables that Manning apparently has not read or refuses to live that life. It's really disappointing. I'm grieving, but I'm also disappointed. And there are times when I'm really, really angry.
How much money did they actually withheld from these victims in your mind?
Well, my perspective is that all the money is the victim's money.
Okay.
All of it.
Okay.
If they had to buy a little plaster and put it in the hole that the bullets might have ricocheted or they scratched the floor or whatever, if there was direct costs to the institution as a result of that event, I don't have any problem with that. But just to say, it's our money, really? For what purpose? You know, this monument, very nice to have a monument to remind everybody what happened. But how can you do that at the expense of a living body who's been hospitalized for 13 months? You know, is it more important to have your name etched on a stone or to give you a quality of life, a basic quality of life, through medical care and attention? You know, again, it's not about Emanuel. It's not about the church. It's not about the structure. It's certainly not about the leadership of the church, and yet every Sunday there's still contributions being put in the basket of people from out of state who come by to give their homage to where it happened, to show that they have great empathy for those who were injured. They have great empathy for the continuing racial injustice that Emanuel, I guess, has been a symbol of that in some degree. But, you know, we got living bodies. We have three souls very much alive. Polly, the child, and Felicia, who need spiritual, social, and financial assistance from the church.
Two questions. When you look back at that SLED investigation, and if you could do it over again, would you ask for any lie detector tests from the people who were handling money?
No, I mean, that comes from leadership. It's that, you know, that's not the investigators who did it. It's the guy in Columbia, the director of SLED, who, you know, I see him in a lot of different areas of life, right? I see what he does and doesn't do. So I don't attribute blame to any of the investigators that work for him. It's the direction of SLED. So, you know, we've been through this. When the event happened, nobody had been through an event like that in Charleston before, so you can't really blame the leadership of the church for the time before they started organizing and gathering. There was a bookkeeper, they fired her, which was unconscionable, who wanted to organize the money. But money was flowing. People were just throwing cash at the church. They were putting money, cash, in envelopes out in front.
Right.
So I'm not approving of it. But I understand how that money can buy somebody's lunch or whatever they did to it, and probably a pretty good slug of money. I mean, we'll never know. But a lot of money. So SLED was focused on that. They went in, who took the money, there was a pile of money here, it disappeared, never got to the bank. So many people were involved that it's hard to pin down any specific person or target. We knew that. I mean, I don't know why they even bothered doing that. The question is, the money that the church acknowledged they received, which was $3.6 million, where did it go, and what was the church's authority to spend that money in the manner that they did? My position is that money was given to the church as a repository to be held in trust for the benefit of the families, all of them. And the church sees it otherwise. The church thinks that's their money. The audacity of the church is that they're taking the position that they've been generous. Oh, are you kidding? They're generous to give $150,000 peanuts when the health care costs are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just, we're not here. We're not communicating. We come from such different perspectives. The church and I are not seeing each other eyeball to eyeball. They think it's their money. I think it's the victim's money. And they have been unwilling to discuss that. They've taken a flat-out position. We've been benevolent. We've been generous. We gave the families money. Yeah, but you still haven't given the granddaughter any money, and you still haven't given Felicia any money. But that's how they think. I mean, it's just it's greed.
Have you been able to look at, I guess, get a copy of the church's budget?
No, they keep saying that they're going to send me a copy of the accounting, but they never have. They said that from summer of 2015. And it really is no business of mine. Frankly, I don't care, because my position is none of that money should have been spent on anything but those that were harmed. And again, the church wasn't harmed. The leadership of the church, they weren't even in Charleston. It's just the gap between my thought process on who deserves that compensation and the church. Manning thinks it's his money. I think it's the victim's money.
And go ahead.
You want to mitigate it? You want to get involved and
I'm getting beaten up a lot over this for asking the right questions, but yeah.
I hope you're not getting beat up for those people being a bunch of crooks. Are you getting feedback from Manning and that crowd that's just taking this money for their own benefit?
You'll talk about that off camera.
Yeah, I mean, that just it accentuates what a bad person, what a blackened soul Manning and that crew has. Manning, what have you done for the grandchild? Hello? What have you done? Do you know where she is? Do you even know her name?
And I hope to get him on Quintin's close-ups to get his side of the story so he can tell the viewers.
Well, what about the rest of the people in the church? Isn't there leadership in the church? Isn't Dudley Gregory a big shot in the church? He runs for office. He's all about town, helping people. Charity starts at home.
Andy Savage, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Love to be with you, Quintin.
Thank you. Yes.